Today is Tuesday, February 11th, and it's a really wet day. I'm looking out the windows behind me. It's wet and rainy and cold, so can't ride. So this is my new Litespeed Flint. And if you remember last time, the previous video, I made some modifications to the back. I've added a titanium rack, and I've got my fenders now mounted. These are the 35mm Gravel King SS Plus tires, excuse me, Gravel King SS tires, not the Plus. But I'm going to be using 40mm SS Plus tires. I do have plenty of clearance. So since it's such an ugly day, today's mission is to work on the front end of the bicycle. I've gotten all the parts in that I need in order to do the modifications today. So what are we going to try to accomplish today? It's a good list of stuff. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace this stock fork with a much better fork from a company called Rodeo Labs. I'm going to be installing a straight seat post rather than a 20mm laid back in order to get the fit of the bicycle much better for me. It's a little bit long here in my cockpit. I'm going to be replacing the handlebars. These handlebars have swept forward a little bit, although it may be trendy, but in order to get the proper fit, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to also be installing a tubeless front rack down low, plus I'm also going to be installing a decular style rack up high here, plus I also have front fenders for this bike, so it's a lot. And many times you might have to take your bike to a bike shop to do this, but as you may well have known, I've worked in 3 different bike shops in my career. I've recently realized my skills are a little rusty. Maybe I'll tell you about that as I go along. I've made a couple of mistakes in ordering items, but that's the way it goes. But I still got the skills and the tools, so let's see what we can do to start modifying this bike to my liking. Let's quickly go over some of the parts that I've chosen for this modification today. When Bill and I visited Linsky, we learned of this company called Rodeo Labs. And they suggested this fork to us because it has one really good unique feature, which you can see right here at the end. You see this aluminum piece on the end of this fork? This is an aluminum piece that has a bunch of extra holes in it for mounting racks. And that has 2 real good benefits. One, it allows you to mount lots of different type of racks, plus it transfers the weight directly to the axle rather than relying on mounts that are along the fork. One other good thing about this fork that I like is if you notice that the side cargo cage mounts here go all the way through the fork, as you can see there. So that makes it even more stronger. Plus this fork also has a way to run a cable for your dynamo hub through here all the way up to the fork, and it exits right here. And it's really nice for mounting lights if you want to use that. And of course it has internal routing for the brake hose. So really a great fork. I think this will work really well for the type of touring that I want to do. Of course, if you're going to mount a fork, you have to have a Chris King headset in purple. And we're going to have a stem mount Garmin computer. Let's see, what's this? Oh, this is just the plug for the end of the fork. That's all that's for. We have a set of fenders we're going to install on the front. I have a straight seat post from Litespeed, 31.6. I have an older set of bars. You can't get these anymore. These are the 3T Ergo Nova Pros. I like these since they're aluminum. Of course, you don't really want to have carbon fiber for touring. Although we're using carbon fiber forks, so I guess I broke my rule. But I like these because they have a flatter section on the top of the bars. I find that if I just use a round bar up here, it transmits too much road shock and creates a pressure point in the palm of my hand. So I like a little bit flatter section to distribute the load. Of course, you got to have handlebar tape. I do double wrap my bars. I've got just a cheap set of handlebar tape here to go underneath, and I like the Supacaz brand to go on the top. And of course, this is the Tubus Ergo rack. You can't get this one anymore because it actually has a nice little triangle down here, which gives you a lot more mounting points. Some of them now just have an S, which I find really doesn't give you a whole lot of bag stability. I will show you that I have mounted an extra little aluminum bar on here, which I'll demonstrate how that works later with the Trek backpacking bags. It actually holds just a dry bag. And since I'm now going with a much larger fork, I had to get a few extra tools this time. I had to get the fork crown race puller. I think this is the model CRP1. And of course I had to get a larger fork crown race setting tool. I think this is the CRS 15.2. And of course I'm going to reuse my headset press tool, and I've got a steer tube cutting tool. And just to do things correctly, excuse all the noise here, I did get the specific Park tool blade to cut carbon steer tubes. So that's it in a nutshell. Over here on this wall, I have all my regular bicycle tools I've collected over many years. So, all right, let's get started. So we're going to try doing a voiceover as I build this Litespeed Flint up for loaded touring. I've watched some other of these type of build videos and thought they were kind of boring. So please let me know in the comments if you think this is boring as well. We'll just see how it goes. So here I've got my Flint up on my stand, and of course, since I'm going to be changing out the fork and the headset, we've got to take all the all the tape off the bars and remove the bars. It's a pretty straightforward process. I'm sure if any of you have ever done maintenance on a bike, you know how relaxing this can be until you actually run into a pretty bad issue. But, you know, that's the way it goes. So I'll just let this go, and I thought I'd tell you a couple interesting stories as the work progresses. So I mentioned that my skills have gotten a little rusty with bike maintenance. You know, my first job was in Louisville, Kentucky at Thornberry Schwinn Cyclery during college. And the first year they wouldn't hire me. They didn't think I knew very much. But the second year they did, and I quickly transitioned from being in the back of the shop to being right up at the front and taking some of the hardest repairs. So that was a lot of fun. This is a neat little tool. This is a fork crown race removal. I think they call this the CSR. No, I can't remember the name of the tool, but it's kind of neat. It actually has a little guillotine that grabs the fork crown race, and then by almost like little sharp wedges of steel you see there, and then you just push the fork up and boom, it comes off pretty easily. So of course, you know, here I'm putting it all back together. And then my flipping back and forth, my second bike shop job was actually after college. I worked at a place in Bowling Green, Kentucky called Nat's Outdoor Sports. We sold, think of that of like an REI but privately owned. So there I actually installed a point of sale system, but I was definitely involved with a bike shop and had lots of fun working on bikes when they let me. And then in later career, and probably from about 1999 to 2003, I worked at an REI here in the Nashville area. Worked in the bike shop, fixing and building bikes. So I've got a few skills, but they are rusty. And here's one way that it got rusty. For this bike, I've ordered and have already received a set of wheels from a company out in Oregon called Astral Cycling. And they actually make aluminum rims right there in Oregon. So I got their aluminum rims. Now this is really important here in the video. I'm actually measuring. I've got 35 millimeters of rise, and most people say you really don't want to have more than 30, more than 40. So here's a process of me going through and marking exactly where you need to cut the steer tube. So I got these new wheels, and you haven't seen them yet, but I'll get them on eventually, and you know, maybe show them at some point. But I've got the Astro aluminum rims, and I've got White Industries CLD hubs, and so this is my second bike with 12 speed. I've got a Look 785 RS Huez, and it has a 12 speed cassette as well. So I assumed that I needed a micro spline free hub, so I ordered that with the White Industries hub. And I received it, and after getting my cassette, which is a, I think it's like a M7100, but it's a 11 to 36 cassette, and I went to put it on and it wouldn't fit. I didn't realize that recently Shimano had come out with another new free hub, and it was called the, I think, RDLS or RDSL or something like that. So it was totally incompatible. So I pleaded the fifth with Astral Cycling and asked them if I could swap free hubs and the axle, and they said sure. So I sent back my microspline free hub and axle, and they sent me another one just for the cost of shipping. So that was really good. So I'd recommend Astral to make some really good wheels. I did have them build them up. I can build wheels, but I just figured they do it every day, all day, for years, and they can probably build them better than I can. So I just let them do it. So there's an example of my lack of expertise, and here you can see now back in the video, you see I pretty much nailed the exact height of the steerer tube. You're only going to get one chance to cut this steerer tube, so you can't add on to it. So I was happy all that worked out, got the right height. It's not too high, it's not going to put any undue stress on the steerer tube or the fork. Alright, now here is my tubeless ergo rack with my added little aluminum rods in the back, and I'm being very careful not to scratch the fork and trying to figure out exactly where it needs to be mounted on the, what they call the extended eyelets on the Rodeo Labs fork. And here I'm just temporarily positioning the fork, or excuse me, the rack on the fork. And not in this video, I did put the wheel back in and set it down and make sure that everything is parallel to the ground. Interesting thing with this fork is that since the cargo cage mounts go all the way through the fork, they recommend that you actually have screws long enough to go all the way through it, just so you gain the total amount of strength. And here's, see, I'm putting on fenders. I didn't do a much recording of putting on my decular rack. You see up there is a Nitto M18 with its custom mount. So that all went pretty well. I probably should have done a little bit more recording, but I missed that. Here you can see I'm putting on a second layer of tape. I always like to have 2 layers of tape. So taping is always kind of fun. It's like it's a little challenge every time, but it's kind of fun just to make sure you actually get it right and you don't leave any spots that you know, are sticking through. If you've made it to this point in the video, I'm impressed. So let's review what I've done for my lightweight touring bike for 2025. I have chosen the Flint from Litespeed. So let's see what we've changed here. The big change is going to be the fork. This is a Rodeo Labs Spork 3.3 that has a 50 millimeter offset. It also has what they call the eyelet extender, which gives lots of different places for the attachment of racks. And here you can see I have a discontinued tubeless Terra rack right here. I believe that this is the Terra, since it has a much larger section here, and it is connected directly to this eyelet extender. Now, for those that know what the Terra rack is, you will find this one aluminum rod that I've attached to it a little odd. This is to allow me to connect my Trek dry bag carriers onto this, which makes it exceptionally light. So that's the other modification I made, was to use an older rack that's no longer available and to accommodate the use of a custom, or not semi-custom, a semi-custom Trek bag. In order for a handlebar bag, I've used the Nitto M18 decular style rack, which is quite hard to come by. I could only find this in the UK, and they had 3 of them. Now, another interesting thing I did was I kind of modified this a little bit to hold actually a regular handlebar bag. I have a Giles Berthoud leather bag, but I found that that bag alone is just over 2 pounds, and with the rack I thought that was a little bit too light to use, or excuse me, too heavy to use with a lightweight touring bike. So I ran the numbers and found that by using the standard Nitto M18 rack and make a custom aluminum bracket here, you may notice that this is an Ortlieb handlebar bag mount that typically would attach to the bars. But since I like lower center of gravity, I've modified this to hook right here. So if you notice, this bag fits onto it like this. On, and it's down. Now, in order to hold this so it doesn't flop around everywhere, what I've also done is I've modified the bottom. Here I've got a couple neat little clips on here. These are from Waxwing, and they call them the raw clips, or RA clips. And they work by sliding in and out like this. You notice this slides in and out, in, out. So this part catches the tube, and then this part goes over the bottom of the tube to keep it from moving around. I'll try to demonstrate that, because it actually clips right here. So we'll just mount the bag onto the rack. Let's see. There we go. All right, now you see that the bag is attached to its standard bracket. And then underneath here, the only thing I have to do is I just push this clip in like that, and then like that. Now, the bag and the rack are one. Very solid. It's not going anywhere with those clips. And it also makes it really easy to take off. Now, two-handed, this would be really fast, but I'll show you how easy it is to do just one-handed. So I just undo this clip, I reach under this clip, undo that mechanism, and the bag is off. So I think it's a pretty neat little modification to the bike. All right, so what else have we done? I have double wrapped the handlebar with 2 layers of tape in order to reduce road shock. Nothing really exciting here. Now I have used some titanium bolts that I got from a place called Better Bolts online. And then of course I put on my front rack just with standard mounting hardware with Velo Orange. I've added a mud flap right here. This is actually just rubber stair tread material that you can get from Lowe's that I've fashioned onto that. One other thing I've done, underneath the rack, I've added an additional attachment here with some nylon spacers. So now the front portion of this rack is actually, or excuse me, the front portion's fender is now attached to the rack. So I'll keep it very sturdy, or excuse me, keep it very steady, and so that the rack, the fender doesn't make a whole lot of noise. Going to the back of the bike, you may have already seen this, but this is the Tubus Liviano titanium rear rack, and it has titanium stays. So you may wonder, what are these little aluminum pieces that I have on top of my rack? They're obviously not normal. I like to use an Arkel trunk bag. You see right here. I've always liked to use this. It has great organization on the inside of it. It's expandable. You can carry just about anything. So I added these aluminum bars. If you notice, the holes on the outside here match up exactly to the bag. And this is easy on, easy off. It's not going to go anywhere. So it's a really good way to mount the bag on the rack with very little change to the rack and very little additional weight. And it also comes off quite easily as well. I've done that on a lot of bikes. The last thing I have back here is my light mount for my Donati rear lights that I like to use, a good flashing blinking light. All right, well, that's all I've got for you for the lightweight touring bike of 2025. If you have any further questions about what I've done and the changes I made, then feel free to send me a comment. I'm sure there's many of you out there that know a lot more about this than I do. So I'd be open to any tips or hints or tricks that you might have to lessen the weight of your bicycle. I know it's, I actually did weigh this, and in the current form it is 27 pounds and 8 ounces. So I was shooting for 25. I didn't quite make it, but that's all right. So at 27 pounds, 8 ounces, I think I can still come in under 50. That's what I'm shooting for still, is 50 pounds with bike and gear. So we'll see if that happens. I promised to show you my lightweight front bag carriers. So this is my Tubus Ergo rack. And if you look closely, I've got little hose clamp here, hose clamp here. I've got a little hose clamp here and hose clamp here. Now the standard Tubus Ergo rack does not have this back aluminum bar because I added that for these little hose clamps. Now why is that? That is so I can attach the Trek dry bag holder, which is right here. This is the Trek dry bag holder, and it connects to a rack by a Velcro strip and 4 little pieces of nylon webbing that connect onto a little clip right here, and it acts as a way to pull a bag tight on it. So you can notice that that's how I have this situated on my bike. I've got my little hose clamp here and a little nylon strap goes right up above it. See how that's right above it? So that keeps it from falling down. And the same thing here, hose clamp and nylon strap. Then also, I use the top bar here, and I take a strap up and over like this, and it grabs onto the front webbing here with a little hook that I can tighten. And I also can tighten each one of these individual side straps to cinch the bag down. So this little bag holder weighs 9 ounces, approximately. I think it's right around 9 ounces. And your dry bag is probably, what, 2 or 3 ounces, so maybe 4 or 5. So this is a super light way to add carrying capacity in the form of a dry bag. Now this one is the Sea to Summit dry bag, and this is the 8-liter. I think they call these the Big River line of Sea to Summits. And this works really well. You can use a smaller one in a 5-liter. I don't know whose bag. Oh, here's a, this is the Sea to Summit as well. And this is a 4-liter bag. It fits in there, but you know, you have to cinch it down, and I find this really isn't big enough. So the 8-liter I have found works really well with these type of dry bag carriers. If you're going to carry something larger, you can also use a 13-liter bag. It may stick up above it just a little bit more, but it works out pretty well. Now, here's the downside. I don't believe you can find these anymore from Trek. So when Trek came out with their 1120 model of bike packing bike, these were actually mounted in an angled fashion on the back of the bike. But I've kind of fashioned this to work on the front rack. So I was lucky to purchase a few of these many years ago when they made them, and I think it works out really well. I'd actually thought I'd finished filming, but I thought of one more thing I want to add to this. So this bike comes in and weighs at 27 pounds 8 ounces. My Co-Motion Americano comes in at 38 pounds. So 11 pounds difference, but of course my Americano has a pinion with a belt drive and has a big heavy steel frame. They can obviously go further, and well, I shouldn't say it can go further, but it could probably handle more terrain than this one can with a heavier load. But it's going to be interesting to see how it goes using a bike that's 11 pounds lighter with full racks and full fenders and everything needed for long distance touring. So I'm happy. It's been a good adventure. It's been an expensive January getting this bike. Wife's probably not super happy spending more thousands of dollars, but hey, you only go around once and you can't take it with you, so you might as well enjoy it. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, gang.